Coming up on the next edition of Power and Politics, student protests around the country are broken up by police as the debate over the conflict in Gaza continues to roil campuses and presidential politics. And back home, the governor eyes a measure that would eliminate the term climate change in the Sunshine State. Hello and welcome to another edition of Power and Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power and Politics is a weekly unbiased look at the top stories affecting the state with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. We want to take a moment to say hello to our many viewers watching as they do every week on stations around the state. I am joined today, as I am every week, by my co-host, Emmy Award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Doctor, welcome.
Great to be here again, Frank.
All right, this past week was the week police moved in to break up ongoing protests in cities and on campuses around the country over U.S. policy in the Middle East. The whole issue of Gaza has also plopped itself center stage in the upcoming race for the White House. And Doctor, before we get to that, let's talk about what's going on in the minds of the protesters.
Well, Frank, I'm glad you brought this up because as a psychologist, I love all activists and protesters, even if I don't like them personally or their cause, as long as they're peaceful. And I really object to all of this that's going on, especially now in the electronic age. What we're seeing is that people are being blocked from going to class, graduation. It's offensive and it's ridiculous, and it's not the right way to protest. If you're going to be an activist, you have to find a way today to do it peacefully and dramatically, but not bother somebody else's right to business or school or whatever.
All right, let's talk about the psychology of this, because here's the issue I have with regard to the protesters, and maybe you can explain this to me. First of all, they are protesting against the United States and its support for Israel. The conflict in the Gaza Strip is heartbreaking on both sides, there's no doubt about it. Right. But if Hamas did not invade Israel and take prisoners, we would not be here where we are right now.
Correct.
So what the protesters are is supporting those folks who started this conflict and have a repressive government where you can't even protest if you wanted to in Gaza.
Well, a good point. And the protesters, in many respects, do have a point to make. But as you said, there's both sides to this, more than two, so many sides to this whole conflict. But what's happened is some of these protesters get it in their mind that they are right, they're the only ones that are correct, and they don't care about anybody else, and that's wrong. And that's where the line has to be drawn. I think the president stepped up. A lot of Republicans and Democrats are stepping up saying it's just not right to interfere with someone else's life in order to demonstrate. And I fully agree. And they
have stopped traffic. They have closed bridges.
It's very ugly. And Frank, I do think it's different now than it was years ago because of the electronic age. The way it appears on TV is really quite ugly, and I think it backfires. I don't think it works.
Let me throw you a curveball here. Some have compared what's going on with regard to these protests to what went on in the 1960s.
Right.
Your thoughts?
Not exactly. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of agitation in the 1960s for many, many different reasons. Again, protesting and not doing it peacefully has always been a problem. It's been a problem. Martin Luther King always wanted peaceful demonstration. There are many people who want that. But now I think what's happening is people only want to take a look at their side. They want to promote their own self-interest, and then it gets to be extreme. And that's what we're seeing, extreme protesting and interfering with other people. Not a good thing. Not good optics, as we always say.
All right. And President Biden, shifting gears for a bit, President Biden delivering a speech at the Capitol this week decrying anti-Semitism. When I saw the speech, I was saying, here we are in 2024, and we still have to be talking about this, anti-Semitism. Why do you think this continues to be an issue? I mean, it's been going on for millennia. But here we are in 2024, and we need a speech by the President of the United States saying anti-Semitism is wrong.
Frank, I'm glad you brought that up, because what we're seeing is that bias and prejudice actually works. I hate to say it, but it does work in the political sphere. There are people who like to be biased against this one or that one, whether it's black or whether it's Italian Americans. You know, we had our own defamation league at one point in time. It could be that bias and prejudice really works and gets those folks on your side. So that's unfortunate, but it's the truth.
All right, switching gears, some salacious details have emerged this week in the hush money trial involving former President Donald Trump. You have about 30 seconds. Your thoughts on that?
I just think the optics in this case are really, really bad for the former president. He just doesn't look good because his words in the past do not reflect what the testimony is right now, you know. And it just doesn't look good right now. It's as we always say, bad optics, and there'll be a price for that.
Some graphic details in the testimony this week as well.
Yes.
Okay, time now for one of our regular segments, a commentary from Dr. Bart Rossi that we call the Rossi Rant.
And Frank, I'd like to go off today on this assault that I call it on mental health here in Florida. And the reason I bring this up is because of this new law that's been passed where you can have religious counselors in school systems. We've talked about it, and we've always said that this is a problem when it comes to separation of church and state. Well, now I'm seeing it a little differently, actually. It's an assault on mental health professionals. Because what's happening is we have people going into the school system, or will go into the school system, and again, maybe they're Mormon counselors, maybe they're nuns, maybe they're rabbis, I don't know. But they're going to be mental health counselors, but they may not know anything about mental health. So where are the people like myself, the psychologists, the licensed social workers, who know something about suicidal ideation or anxiety and depression? Where are those people? This law is a separation of church and state problem, and it's a problem and an assault against mental health.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Coming up, the Republican vice presidential sweepstakes comes to Florida with an event in Mar-a-Lago as 3 Florida politicians remain on the list of potential VP candidates. A deep dive into that when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla, joined by political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. The presumptive Republican presidential nominee, Donald Trump, held a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago this past week, which also served as a showcase for who might be the next vice presidential nominee of his party. Now, before we get into what happened, what transpired at Mar-a-Lago, I don't hear anyone speaking about this on the air. I have yet to hear this. But if you know the Constitution, and I checked this week, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3, and the 12th Amendment, which was passed in 1804, those many years ago, forbids the president and vice president from coming from the same state. Okay. So he's talked about Rubio, senator from Florida. He's talked about Congressman Donalds, congressman from Florida, and Ron DeSantis as possible vice presidential candidates. Technically, they can't be vice president.
Well, the psychology here
Give me the psychology of that.
Is very interesting, because if they have to move out of state, then what does that say about them representing the people of Florida? They don't care about the people of Florida. They're gonna move out of state and be someplace else so they could be the VP. Again, this is not a good look. So you're bringing up a point that is really has to be looked at carefully.
Which hasn't been brought up. Now, in 2000, if you recall, Dick Cheney was technically a resident of Texas, but he immediately established residency in Wyoming so he could run as vice president with George W. Bush. Okay, does that mean that, let's say, if President Trump would like to have Senator Rubio be his vice president, would Rubio have to leave the Senate, which I believe that's the case, move to another state, establish residency just to run for vice president?
Well, what does that say about Senator Rubio and his...
Should he do that? We're not saying he's doing that, but
no, and his commitment to the people of Florida. It just smacks of some type of political shenanigans to kind of do that, and I don't think that's going anywhere. I have a feeling that can't happen.
Well, while we're on the subject of psychology, let's take this one step further. The last vice president, or President Trump, Mike Pence, was a loyal vice president the entire time, stood by the president, and it ended with those who broke into the Capitol calling for him to be hanged.
Right.
Now, if I'm a potential vice presidential candidate to Donald Trump, aren't I thinking about that?
Well, you're thinking about that. You're bringing up a good point, but the bigger point is the personality. Donald J. Trump and his persona, his personality, given what we all know, whether you're on the right or the left or in the middle, who is going to fit into that type of a personality.
But psychologically, why would you desire that job
Right.
knowing that the last guy who held that job was thrown out of the party, essentially, and there were calls for him to be hanged?
Well, only if you believe that you can handle Donald Trump and it's a step in the right direction for you politically. That you're bringing up a good point. It's a giant leap for anyone to jump in and be the VP, given the personality, the dynamics associated with Donald Trump. Again, no matter what party you're in, it's true. And I think that you're bringing up a point that a lot of people may not be thinking about. That how do you actually say yes to the VP slot?
Exactly. My point exactly. Also, I don't know if you saw this. Of course, you know about it. Last week, 6-week abortion ban took effect in the state of Florida. The governor has now moved to expand the so-called safe haven law. And that means if you have a child born within 7 days, you could drop it off at a hospital, a firehouse, an emergency medical office, and just walk away. No charges. You just leave that child essentially on the doorstep. Okay? Your thoughts?
I think it's kind of an assault on women. I mean, they still have to have the child. They're still forced to have the child, and now he's making an exception that it's easier to give away the child. I mean, it's a convoluted way of trying to make this situation better somehow with this crazy abortion law that nobody likes at 6 weeks. And by the way, at 6 weeks, how do you actually say that I was raped or there was incest? How do you actually prove that? Mm-hmm. You get a team of lawyers and you can afford that? It basically means that 6 weeks is it, and you have no choice. The government is dominating over you, and to get to this point, it means that it's really another assault on women.
In defense of the governor, he has this measure in front of him. It would extend the 7-day deadline to 30 days. All right, so you're right. Maybe I have a child I don't really want. I have 30 days to decide whether or not I'd like to drop it off, no charges, just walk away. Essentially, again, leaving it on a doorstep.
I just can't get over the psychology associated with what this means towards women. It just seems to be like some type of shallow political stunt to kind of get around the abortion issue.
All right, the governor's also looking at a bill that would eliminate the term climate change in the state of Florida and forbid wind turbines. And right now we don't have any off the coast of Florida, nor are there any plans to put any off the coast of Florida. Your thoughts on this? You've said this before. I concur probably on this. It is a political stunt. I mean, it's a term. It's well-known, climate change, and there are no wind turbines anyway.
Well, Frank, we're not experts on wind turbines.
We're not.
We don't have any expertise there, except that what we hear from scientists is that it works, number one. And number two,
it generates power.
Yes, I mean, it does work. I mean, it's been effective. And number two, and more importantly to your question, climate change is here. There really should be no debate.
There are some who argue it is not.
I understand, but there's also the flat world people that they don't even believe in the solar system. And we have people that are very far out in their thinking, okay? But climate change is here, and most Floridians believe it's here and identify it as a problem.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we see who was up and who was down this week as we present the always popular Sunshine or Shower segment when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back. As you know, the weather can be fickle in Florida, especially during the summer. Sunshine part of the day, showers later, you know how it works. Using that as the setup, every week we see who's up and who's down in a segment we call Sunshine or Showers. Doctor, we start with sunshine today.
Frank, this was not a hard choice this week because it's been National Nurses Week. And I believe that nurses should be in the sunshine, a lot of sunshine.
Yes.
For what they do. I had many nurses in my practice as a psychologist actually doing behavioral health services and medical behavioral services. They were just spectacular. And it helped me and it helped us deliver fine services. So, who do you have in the sunshine?
Are you on sunshine? I have, putting the politics aside, folks, I have Joe Biden, President Joe Biden in the sunshine, and I'll tell you why. Richard Nixon said it long ago. He said, never shoot down. And what he meant by that is never respond to someone who is below you in a political realm who is taking a shot at you, because you just feed into that and give oxygen to the news story. News is conflict. So the president has been, it's an old style political trip, and he's been doing it perfectly. He's been bashed from every angle. He has yet to comment on the Trump trial. So he's not given any oxygen to that. He receives criticism from governors and state senators and mayors and so on. But he doesn't, as Nixon would say, shoot down. Because when you're the president and you start responding to people below you in the political realm, you're giving oxygen to that story and giving it even more time in the news. If you just ignore it, it goes away naturally. So again, putting the politics aside, he's the consummate professional when it comes to this and not shooting down. So Joe Biden, the president, in the sunshine this week.
Okay, very interesting.
Every day, every sunny day in Florida, the clouds happen. Usually in the summer, 3 o'clock, it rains like the dickens, okay? So who is in the showers for you this week?
We have heavy showers for all of the protesters and activists on the campuses around the country because they're interfering with other people and their lives. As I said earlier in the show, I love all protesters and activists, even if I don't really like the person or the cause, as long as they're peaceful. Even, I'll give you an example, Phyllis Schlafly, years ago, she was a woman who went around the country and she wanted women to be home, not working. They should be mothers. She didn't believe in women's rights in many respects, but she was out there and she was very conservative, very much one-sided in her point of view. I kind of admired her, even though I didn't particularly like her or her cause. I didn't agree with anything.
But she did it peacefully and made a point.
Yes, she did. And that's the point.
Okay. All right, that's good. It's your turn now.
Okay.
I have to key you every week. We have to practice. We have to rehearse.
We need more practice.
So you're asking me who is in the showers?
Showers.
This is a real easy one, folks. This was, as soon as I heard showers this week, I knew. The governor from the great state of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, is in the showers this week. If you have not heard, she wrote in her new book that she had a misbehaving dog, a 14-month-old misbehaving dog. And instead of trying to find a new home for it or trying to get a trainer for it, she took it in a ditch after she went out and shot it in the face. She killed her 14-month-old dog. Find out later on that she wrote this in her first book, but the publisher said, look, you don't want to put that story in the first book. But she put it in the second book, I guess to show that she's a tough person. But Republicans and Democrats, everybody loves their pet. And to kill a dog, all you need to do is find a new home for the dog.
What does it say about her?
Exactly. Kristi Noem is in the showers this week.
Deserves it.
Not only showers, she's drenched in showers this week. Okay. Right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, a commentary by yours truly titled, Let's Be Frank, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. We all saw the devastation Hurricane Ian visited upon Florida a year and a half ago. We all fell for those who lost so much. But what has happened in the year or so since is troubling, but sadly not surprising. What we are now seeing in the state is something I have reported on again and again in all the hurricanes, floods, and natural disasters I have covered in my nearly 40-year radio and TV news career. The job of insurance companies is pretty simple. They take your money, often over decades, and it's their job to manage that money, grow it, and create a reservoir of cash to pay you when disaster strikes. But when you so desperately need that money, those same insurance companies that demand you pay on time don't follow their own rules. It starts with insurance companies going line by line through your policy, looking for a reason not to pay you, a clause or stipulation that exempts them from writing you a check. If that doesn't work, then they'll stall your payment, lowball you, or generally wait for you to be so desperate you'll accept anything they'll give you. Of course, this does not apply to every insurance company. I have also done stories in which insurance companies have stepped up to the plate to make families whole again, sometimes within days. But far too many insurance companies slow walk things, which leads me to believe it is less of a coincidence and more of a strategy. All of this hit home for me literally when I received my insurance bill this month. Thankfully, my home did not sustain any damage from Hurricane Ian, but like millions of Floridians, I and you will end up paying for the storm one way or another. Many of us don't mind helping our fellow Floridians. I know I don't. But my insurance, like yours, should not double. That begs this question: where did all the money we send them so they could pay us in the bad times go? I have never had an insurance executive I have interviewed properly explain to me where the millions go that we send them every month. But if you Google the salaries of the executives who are charged with keeping their companies solvent, you might get an idea. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-host, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and all the folks working behind the scenes, Thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time and on this same station. Have a great week.